Hello, Sid here, and welcome to the Drunken Ork. Now, about 2.5 years ago, I built a Mega Grot Tank. I built it from a Chimera as the tracks, and then built up the rest of it with just bits and bobs really. Plastic tubes, plastic card, rivets, bits of chain, grot models, you know, stuff. And yeah, it's still actually, as of, you know, now, my most watched vid. I've got a few pictures of it popping up now, so you can have a look. There you go. So it's quite large. It does fit the dimensions of a grot tank, but as you can see, I went for a look. Dirty, ramshackle, just cobbled together, and I wanted it to look a bit like a boat. So basically, to me, a boat or a ship is very tall and yet very thin, and that's not really what a boat is at all. But it's it would be if you took the ship out of the water and then just stuck it on the ground with all the bits that you normally under the water that you don't see just there. That's the bit that sticks on the mud as it trundles forward, and that's what I was going for. So you can see from the front, quite a narrow profile, but tall, lots of levels of guns, and most importantly, lots of grots sort of scampering about all over it. So after using the Mega Grot Tank all the way through 9th, twice, I thought it was quite good. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to make another one. 10th then came in, and it's not quite so good. It's cheaper, but it's not quite so good. But still, they are pretty awesome, and they look great. And if you want to field grots, yeah, I think it's a must as a centerpiece or centerpieces to a grot force. So anyway, yeah, this video, this one here, this isn't coincidence. This is the video where I'll show you the build of my second Grot Mega Tank, or as it sort of turned out to be, a Grot Giga Tank, which is exactly the same as a Mega Tank as far as the rules are concerned. Although you could probably run it as a battle fortress or a kill tank, I suppose, if you absolutely had to. But you know, there you go. It's a big tank basically. So let's have a look at the build. Starting off, we're going to have a look at my blueprints, or green prints, or see, it's actually just the colour of the post-it note, but you know what I mean. I knew I wanted 2 sets of tracks from the battle wagon, because I want to use lots of battle wagon parts in this build, because that's important to use battle wagon parts when you're doing kit bashes and conversions at the minute. If you know, you know. So 2 sets of tracks, and I was going to use some turrets off it as well. I decided to have 3 main turrets forward, a little one on top, and then one at the back. Again, I wanted to keep the narrow profile like I did with the first Grot Mega Tank, although because the battle wagon tracks are lovely and very wide and flat, I wasn't going to angle these in to try and get a shippy sort of feel to it. It just wouldn't have been right. Now to fit those turrets, like I say, I sketched out a bit of a weird shape. It's like a block with an upside down L on it. It's a bit like I'm shit at Tetris. And that was that was to fit the turrets and what have you on. There's a few little measurements scribbled on there, approximate. I know you're thinking, who the fuck writes 1.62 inches? Yeah, it's me. It's good to start with a plan, and it's absolutely fine to deviate from it. So here's me tracks. Like I say, 2 lots of battle wagon tracks. And in the background, let's bring this forward, you can see what I'm going to be mounting them onto, which is basically the back part of the battle wagon hull. I removed it from the front part, and I also took a piece which I'd already removed from the front part, using the front part of that battle wagon kit in a different kit bash, which is part of the Warboss challenge, so you'll probably see that at some point in the future. I stuck the 2 bits together and raised them up a bit with just a couple of strips of plastic card. And if I flip it upside down, you can see for added structural support, I stuck some coffee stirrers from Greggs, the nation's baker. This channel is not sponsored by Greggs, but I am open to discussion. So here's the turrets I'm going to use. There is the 2 battle wagon turrets with the zap guns, the 80-bitty Grot big shooter turret. There's a lobber, which I thought I'll stick on somewhere. Spoiler alert, I ended up not bothering. And there's also, you can see near the back, a green turret, which is off a Russian KV Summit. I want to say 88. Toon Tank, which I've cut the gun off as it was small and weedy. And then on the right is a turret off a Sherman Toon Tank, which I also took the gun off and just bodged together a gun for it. And that's going to be the turret on the back. Or at least that's the plan at this point. This is a sheet of plasticard. Good, eh? Now it's 2mm plasticard. It's going to be the base of the Grot Tank. Sorry, the deck. Nautical. And on one side is this, which is the 2mm plasticard, and there's a couple of strips down either side. That was very important, and this will have a use later, which will come to. But for now, strips. And on the other side, I just basically stuck a large piece of diamond plate decking on it. You know, like the cross-cut industrial sort of looking stuff. Grip, that's the key. So that was on the other side. And this would be stuck with the strip side down on top of the large section which is going to house the tracks, on top of the plasticard bits I put on there. Now here, don't be fooled, I didn't hire a team of professional graphic designers for this. This is something I did on my own, in paint no less, just as a more refined version of what the tank's going to be. So as you can see, tracks at the bottom, then we've got the bit in red is the shape I need to make with plasticard, and then 1, 2, 3 turrets, 4 at the back, 5 the little one on top. And as you can see with this, I've written 6.5 and 5.5 inches around it, which shows it is the correct size. This doesn't last. It hasn't got the prow on here either. But it gives us something to work off. I also rounded off the measurements into sizes which are measurable with the human eye, which is nice. Here is the left and right side of the main body, cut from 2mm plasticard. And here it is again, but from a slightly higher angle. Then I put the main body together just by cutting a long strip of 2mm plasticard and then just slicing off the bits I needed for the top, the front, the lower top, the further forward front, the back. You know, you get the idea. You just pop them on. And then that sticks onto the deck. You can also see 2 strips of plasticard sticking out from the front. And that's 1/2mm plasticard. The reason I like the 1/2mm plasticard is because it's very easy to work with because it's so bendy. You can actually get some interesting shapes out of it. It's fuck all use for building the main structure, but if you want to sort of, you know, get a curve on something, it's great. The stuff I've got's always a little bit shiny, I don't know why, so I just give it a quick, you know, once over with some fine sandpaper and it's good to go. Now under there's actually 2 lips, one on the track section and one is the strip I attached to the underside of the deck, and I just cut long thin strips of the 1/2mm plasticard slightly too wide to fit in between those 2 lips. So when you put it in, the only way you can get it to fit is if it's slightly bent, and that way I could bend it inwards to give like a nice curve. I've got a close up here, there we go, which should explain it or help show it a little bit better. So you've got the lip of the grey original battle wagon kit, so it tucks in there and then it sort of curves inwards and then fastens under the lip of the strip that I attached to the underside of the deck. I hope that makes sense. It just gives from the front this Grot Tank a kind of, you know, it curves out like a ship's hull does. It might not taper at the bottom, the bit that's underwater, but it does sort of flute out like a funnel, which you know, I wanted it to do. I also at this point decided that the Sherman Toon Tank was not very good. I didn't like it. Every time I looked at it, sick came into my mouth and I felt revulsion, so I sacked it off, and instead I decided just to build a little sort of deck area for the grots to sit in and reminisce about good times and enjoy a nice cool drink and maybe smoke a cigarette through a bit of a biro, you know, just chill. And I wanted to use the old school with the old gargants and stuff from back in, you know, the early 90s and possibly even late 80s, where a lot of the Ork vehicles had roof tiles and stuff like that. So there we go, built a little old school style decking area. Just coffee stirrers to make the planks, and the tiles, I actually built the shape of the roof with plasticard and just tiled it with cardboard. The cardboard, of course, coming from the Ork Battle Wagon box, because it's important to use pieces from your battle wagon. warbosses! You can see from this side there's only one plank. That actually tops off at ground level inside there. And I did make the other two plank sides, it just wasn't stuck on yet. Because although you can't really see into this little area, I've tried now it's finished. You've got to sort of get a torch and that. There is a few grots in there doing grotty things, and it's got rivets and there's a door that leads into the main tank, and it's even got a mesh ceiling, which I don't know if you can actually see from this angle. I'll try zooming in, but yeah, cool little sort of, you know, old school throwback touch. This is a panel off some terrain I got from Russia before the Troubles. It was basically for a terrain kit from a site called Soldark. Belt and sight, dead good value, and this is one of the pieces for the terrain I ended up not using. I thought, well, one day I will use that on a vehicular build, and this is that day. So it was obviously a little bit the wrong size, so with the old trusty hobby saw, took the bottom of it off and used that on one of the panels. You can just see it there on the side, the vertical piece to the right of the tiled roof. A few other bits there, I had to patch up a few bits with green stuff. You can see at the top of the tiled roof. It looks terrible, but I basically done that on purpose. It's meant to be like lead flashing, and I don't think orcs and grots would put too much care and attention to lead flashing. Just slap it on, you know what I mean? Bang it in place. And then the next bit is a couple of bits off the battle wagon. The track assembly bit, which I used for the tracks, there was a bit spare. I thought, right, stick them on. They've got rivets, they've got bits and bob, they'll do. So I clagged them on. Bits at the bottom are off the back of a tow rocks, I believe. And because they weren't quite the right height, I slap some green stuff on there and square it off. On the back, you see I used the full tow rocks back hatch. It's got the headlights, or should I say the brake lights on it, as well as a big hatch for getting on and off, or embarking and disembarking, as it is. And there's also the panel off the battle wagon, which covers the engine in the back, which has just been cut to size and put underneath. Just is a bit of a vent, a little bit of grating. Now we go on this side, you can see that piece of terrain that I stuck on. You can see that a little better now. And then the bit I'd cut off, that's got a bit of pipe on it, so I thought, right, I'm having that, we'll stick that on. And there's a couple of bits and bobs of plastic cards scattered about it as well. The door, I think, is off a tow rocks. The panel on the left, Bane blade with a little plastic card Dargan rivet, which I think was originally going to be on the first Mega Grot Tank, and I ended up pulling it off and not using it. And I got a few viewing slots from other kits and just snipped off the excess plastic and stuck those on as well. And this is the turret mount for the battle wagon. The eagle-eyed amongst you might be looking at that and going, hang on a minute, that's a slightly different shape than normal. And if we look underneath, yes, you can see there the top side I have cut off and moved in and reattached it and patched up the bit of plastic card just so it's the right width to fit the Grot Tank. If it was the original size, the turret would be off centre or it would spill out over one of the sides. Either way, this was the best fix. Pop it in place. Now I can see obviously it's going to hang over the front, and you can see for the bit of body behind it, I've just stuck half a barrel on, another armour plate and just a bit of L-shaped plastic card. I'm basically just padding it out. You might also be able to see above it, there's lolly sticks, actually coffee stirrers, sorry, better angle here. So I put the coffee stirrers on. I then took I think it's the gunner cockpit from a Waaagh bomb and stuck that on. Thought this will be the turret mount for the Toon Tank turret. Unfortunately, it looked a bit daft, so I went and double clad the coffee stirrers, and where it was going round the turret, instead of cutting them, I just snapped them. That way they sort of splintered wood and jagged bits, and it looks like almost this is sort of burst up through it. So I just felt that was a bit better. This is the other side, matching door. Not quite matching, as you can see it's a bit higher up, needs ladders to get there, and anything I could find basically. There's a little vent panel there, just stuck on just to the lower right of the door. There is some pieces of that Russian terrain, long connection pieces, which are just above the panel to the bottom left. The green sort of leg bits, that is actually both halves of the Toon Tank turret gun. When I cut it off, it fell apart because I never glued it, and I thought, oh look, little daft robot legs, I'm sticking it to my tank. There's a box above it. I couldn't tell you what that's from, to be fair. No idea. It looks dead oaky, but I don't think it is. And then of course we've got some exhaust assembly above that. I also stuck a couple of big shooters on, which are basically some of the side guns from the Ork kit, and then I just made a little viewing slit to stick above them. It just gives it an extra couple of shooters. Done that on both sides, as you can see. And at this point, I'm basically just finding any little bits and bobs I can, anything that looks like a nice piece of armour plating, any little gribbly bits, and I'm just sticking them in the gaps. I don't want smooth bare plastic card. I want bits and bobs and twiddly bits. It's the gribblies that do it. And if I didn't have the piece, I was just getting plastic card, cutting a weird little shape, a triangle or something, roughing up the edges and sticking it in. Work continues. Some exhaust got added to that armour plate with the dag on it. Glyph plates, vents, I think they're off the back of a missile system, off the Imperial sort of tank sprue, and then there's a little hatch beneath that, because you've got to have hatches on a tank. On the front base, the front turret mount, you can see a little vent on the side of that. That was the short exhausts off the Waaagh bomb kit. They've got a slight curve to them, so they fit the hull of the Waaagh bomb, but I just cut them off so they were nice and flat, so they fit on a flat surface, and that's a bit that was cut off. I thought, that's a nice shape, I'm sticking that on as well. There we go, a nice little pressure wheel there, and above that, a nice little space filler. It's just getting a bit of plastic rod with a bit of plastic tube that's slightly bigger, so it slides nicely inside, and basically cut a couple of rings from the tube and just pop them on the rod and then stick the rod down. And it's just like a bar held in place. Don't ask us what it is, what it does, but it looks like it does something. It fits. And you can see as well here I've started putting the rivets on. There's even a sledgehammer, little tool, because you've got to have tools. And there's a little window off a stomper on there as well. And there's it from the other side again, this time with the rivets. And I've tipped it up slightly here, just to show you the section there I mentioned before, which was the curved bit under the deck. Because that was just one large, smooth piece of plastic card, that had to be sort of detailed as well. Instead of putting all the, viewing slits and vents on it, which would have been tricky due to it being curved, I just got the 1/2mm plastic card out again, all my offcuts, and I just bent the offcuts just gently and then just stuck them in place with poly cement. Put them at the edges, overlapping, the usual stuff, just go mad with it. And then when I come to the rivets, I've got a tube of Vallejo plastic putty. I've had it for a while, I'm actually running out, I think I need to invest in a new one. And it's basically it comes with like toothpaste, it sets pretty hard, and I just use that as just like a dauber and just daub the rivets on. And half an hour later, it's good to go. And of course, done the same to the other side. For the prow, I cut 2 triangles of 2mm plastic card, one to be the extension of the deck, so that's the top piece, which I also had the diamond plate put on, and the second triangle was a right angle triangle, which I done just underneath, and that's the bit which actually points forward. I flattened it off at the bottom. I'd like to say that was a carefully thought out artistic decision, and it wasn't just because it was too big and had to be cut so it didn't stick in the ground. Take from that what you will. I'd also cut a little notch into the battle wagon track components at the bottom to slide that second triangle into, just to make it more secure. That was just a case of trial and error. Didn't have to be pretty, it was just hack and stick basically. You can also see a hole in the prow where it connects to the main body on the side. There is another one on the other side, and they were cut away because I wanted to mount a big pair of scorchers where it was flat, and then I was just going to patch up the prow around them to fill that hole in, which we'll come to in a second, but that's what that big hole is. Yeah, you can see the prow from the top, you get the idea of the shape, and you can see the turret mount as well I mentioned earlier. So if that hadn't have been sort of trimmed width-wise, one of those walkways, I think it's the one on the left, would have had a great big bit, sticking out. It would have been no walkway there. Now, that simply wouldn't do. There's a prow from the front. You can see that's the kind of ship shape. Ship shape! That's a term! But that's the kind of ship shape I was going for. There it is with a scorcher in place. So you can see there's a little bit of patchwork around there, and I've also patched up the rest of the prow. Same way I've done the curve bit before, just with little strips and scraps of 1/2mm plastic card. So that's a scorcher on the right, and it'll probably not surprise you to see a scorcher on the left. It's very similar. Now the whole point of having a prow is so you can ram people with it. I've never been in the Navy, but I'm pretty sure that's right. However, this is just a bit of wonky metal. So what I'd done was, I got a bit of plastic girder and made that. It's basically a U-shaped plastic girder with a couple of kill saws from the Death Dread kit in there. Just something that looks dangerous. packed it all in, and then just glued that directly onto the front of the prow. Now when it rams things, they'll feel it. Although not in game. Honestly, strength 4 and 10th. Piss weak. That's it from the other side, and you can see that I've put the rivets on with the plastic putty as well. So this is the first turret, sitting right at the front of the Grot Tank. It's off the battle wagon with a zap gun, and the little turret on top of it is a puppet sword turret. These are mint, they're about £1.50 each or something. They're just great just to stick on, you know, any turrets you've got when you're making one of the many tanks that orcs use. So it's one of those with the, I believe it's the assault cannon off a Space Marine land speeder. There's a sight on there and a bit of piping off a custom mega cannon, I think, off the Waaagh bomb. Just stuck on the side like a little teapot handle. So with that on, that's still not enough dagger, so got one of the super shooters off the Waaagh bomb kit and stuck that on the side of the turret as a coaxial. And also one of the rocket systems from the Death Dread on there as well. You can never have too many guns. Now in the back right hand corner of this turret, there is a little socket which is normally for the periscope. Now I don't have the periscope, or at least I don't want a periscope on the lowest turret. That seems stupid. So I wasn't going to go with that. So I thought, what am I going to do with this? I need to plug it in. To put another gun in, maybe a Death Dread arm or a Killer Can arm with a wrecking ball or something like that on the end. And I thought, no, I'll put this guy. Now this is the Grot off the back of the knob Warbiker. There's a banner pole for the knob and the Grot hanging off it. Now that's not exactly what I want here, so what I've done was, I cut off his legs, I cut the banner pole away from him, but left the hand holding something, and I also snipped off the arm. I cut it off at the shoulder, and I also cut the hand off because I wanted to reposition the arm itself and the hand, because I was going to have him firing like a pintle mounted weapon. Then glued his right arm and hand in place, sort of at a much lower angle. This is to show obviously he's firing something in front of him, but left the left arm where it was, sort of sticking out to the side, because I was planning on having him holding a banner. And there he is in place. The little Grot body with no legs just sits perfectly in that turret. He doesn't look squashed. It looks like he was made to be there. I don't know how, I've never seen this before. And for the pintle mounted, instead of having a shooter, which is, you know, where I was originally going to go, I found this little grenade launcher on the Cardi B Ridge Hauler Runner device. So I just made a little mount for that, and so he's there popping off grenades and holding a big old stick. Now this is basically, I ran a pin through his hand into both parts of the plastic rod, which is solid rod, again just drilled through with, I think it's a 0.8mm drill bit, just so I can put a pin in so it's nice and secure and won't snap off when I knock it. And I will knock it. And I have. There he is from the other side. Give him the coolest Grot head there is. Baseball cap and shades. Honestly, it's the fucking best. I'll fight you. I'll die on that hill. And there we go. It's just ready to take the flag itself when I get round to it. And as you can see there on the right hand side of the turret from the back, I had to carve a bit away. That was just a space issue. That's so it would fit in and it wouldn't get stuck at a funny angle. I could have a little bit of leeway when positioning it. And there he is with the flag. Now the flag itself is again some 0.5mm plastic card. All I do is I cut the basic flag shape out, which is generally a rectangle. I tatter it up with a knife a bit, and then I drill a few holes in. Sometimes I do the holes last, sometimes I do them first, just for bullet holes really. And then I light a candle, and I hold the flag over the candle, burning my fingers, until it gets soft enough just to sort of play with a little bit. And it doesn't take much, just to make it look like it's actually flowing. With the heat it just makes it that little bit easier, and you can put sort of ripples and folds in it. I also ran some thread through the flag and round the pole in a couple of places just to show where it's tied on, and stuck an orc skull on top because these grots aren't messing around. Onto the second turret. This is the one from the KV possibly 88 Toon Tank. The gun on the front was terrible and I'd already used it as piping on the side of the main body, so I stuck a little bit of 2mm plastic card on the front just to give us a flat mounting surface, and then put the two big super shooters from the Waaagh bomb on there. Don't know what they are, probably run them as just massive guns. Is that a thing? Yeah, why not? On the top I added a turret off the battle wagon just because the turret off the Toon Tank was whee. So the Ork turret is just a little bit more beefier. I rammed a squig into it because, you know, it's a squig in a tank turret. It's fucking hilarious. And also stuck a missile rack from a Space Marine land speeder, one of the old ones. Now no longer available, shame. On the side as well, just to give it more rockets. Because it was pretty basic in shape and, you know, detail, I then just stuck some plastic card on to clad it. Stuck a load of dags on the front, some big rivets in it, actually nuts and bolts. And a few other bits on as well, just to give it some texture. On the other side, I stuck some checks. Again, I love those checks. Just cut a thin strip of plastic card, about half the width of the area you want to be checker. And then once you've got that, pop, 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 cut the strip into little squares and then just glue them on, staggered like that. Checks. I mean, they're quite beefy ones really, to be fair, for that area, but, you know, different sizes, fine. There's a few more bits of plastic card on there, and the big glyph plate was something I'd scratch built for a grot tank a long time ago. It just means grots, although it does look more like Terence and Phillip from South Park, but, you know. I like the look of it. I thought I'm saving that, so clag that on the side. This was sent to me by Gerhard from the Ork Community Discord. He was in a box of goodies. He sent us all the way from the US of A. Woohoo! Pew pew! 5. And yeah, it was a commissar. Now, I don't have much use for a commissar, but I do have a use for the commissar's bits. I've since used his sword as well. Haha. So I chopped his head off and give him a hattiectomy. Because there's no commissar going to be wearing his hat around my orcs. But what will wear the hat is a squig. So if a squig's going to sit in a command turret, he needs to have a hat to show his authority. Third big turret, another battle wagon one, another zap gun, another pintle mounted big shooter. This time stick bomb launchers on both sides, and we're going to go with the periscope. I'm not going to stick that big daft skull on, no, I don't like it. Instead, the clenched fist of power. In the all on top, I'm sticking this little grot shooter turret, with a grot stick in his bond suit, and also a couple of rockets from the Death Dread and go up there as well. It was seeming a little underpowered up top. Now from here, you can see that I actually cut the lid off. If I had to tell you now why I did that, I couldn't. Maybe it was just so I could get at that door, because I wanted to cut the back door away, but I didn't want to completely destroy it. You know, I just want to like drill it out. I want to just cut around the edges so I could still use the door, and have it folding down on the hinges. Like that. There's a little bit of plastic card stuck on the back just to give it some texture, and that chain, I believe, is from one of the Torment engines from the Nuns with Guns. Sent to us again by Gerhard. So cheers for that, mate. Now the reason I wanted that to pop down was so I could have a grot stand on it, adding a little bit extra firepower with his itty bitty grot shooter. There it is with all the bits together, and of course another glyph plate on the side, just a little bit more detail. Now this is a big shooter, or rather I think it's a heavy stubber, but I stuck a bit of plastic tube in the barrel, so now it's a big shooter. It's got, I think, what's called a twin C-mag at the back, so lots of ammo, and it's from the generic Imperial vehicle, what is not Space Marines. It's got an Ork shield on the front, from the Battle Wagon kit. So it's good to use your Battle Wagon pieces when making kit bashes and conversions. And a couple of plastic card dags. Now the whole point of this is going to be mounted at the back of the entire grot tank in the Mediterranean seating area the grots have got going on. Just something for them to shoot when they're running away, really. So here I got some plastic rod, which is basically shaped like a semicircle, and I used it just to slice off little sort of sections and glue them all the way along the side of the actual deck. And it's basically just used as mounting points for the deck rails. And here's the start of the deck rails. Now because there's not much room going down the side of these walkways, the posts themselves had to be at a slight angle, so I just drilled a little hole in each of the mounting points at a slight angle. Once the holes were drilled, I just had little bits of pre-cut brass rod, and they were just glued into place. Once they were glued in, I then got a bit of plastic tube and I drilled the little holes in like I was making a tiny little flute for the wee folk. Just every few millimeters drilled a little hole, and then I cut the plastic tube into sections, so each little section had one hole in it, and then I threaded the bit of chain through that bit of plastic tube, and then with a little dab of super glue on the end of the rod, stuck the hole in. The rod went into the hole, it all got super glued up, the chain, the tube, the rod, and and it dries, and that's it really. You do the next one and you leave a little bit of sag in the chain. You could do it tight if you wanted, you could leave a lot of sag, you could do it any way you want. I like a little bit of sag. And then at the very front of the Grot tank, I just stuck a larger section of the plastic tubing, glued some chain, glued the end of the chain into it, and then just stuck it to the front, and on both sides cut at an angle so they meet, and that just secures the chains. And that's just a quick shot of a Grot. As you can see, I've cut away his little melee weapon from his left hand, and I've carved his hand out so he's holding something, and that he's just going to be sat under the roof tiles, and that hand just holds on a part of the planking. Just integrates him more with the model as opposed to him just being stuck on. So here it is, all ready to get primed. Main part of the tank itself, obviously I'll just hold, not priming it. But the turrets, because I need to give them a full sort of like, 360 prime all over, above, below and all the rest of it, I just drill little holes in the bottom, whack a few cocktail sticks up, and then just pop it on a big block of polystyrene. All 4 turrets are on there, as well as the planking, the rear shooter, and I think the Grots as well from in the little sort of sitting area at the back. Because there's no way I'm going to stick them in then paint them. I'd rather fully paint them and then stick them somewhere out of sight. Naturally. There it is, primed, looking all black, and all the turrets in place. And you see, when you get to this stage, this is when I always get like really excited with one of these builds. I'm thinking, oh, this is it. It's starting to come together now. Now it looks like it. When it's all grey and white and whatever other colour sort of bits and bobs you've put on there, it can just look a lot like a heap of junk basically, which in a lot of cases this is exactly what they should look like. But once you get it primed, it just brings it all together, it just uniforms all the pieces. And I thought, since at the start I'd went to great lengths to make sure that it was within the same sort of size range as my first Grot Mega tank, I would check for a second time in the build process to ensure that this was still the case. As you can see here, it's like there's a mirror between them and there's only one model. They're identical in scale. Honest, if you're seeing something different, I suggest you check your monitor settings, because I don't know what to tell you, they're identical. Now at this point, I have done the base metallics. I've said this before on numerous build videos, this is how I like to paint my vehicles. I'll start off priming them black. I'll then get the old airbrush out, give them a blast of gun metal. I like them to be metallic, but I don't like it to be too bright. Gun metal's just perfect for that. Once it's gun metal, I'll give it a once over with a contrast paint, generally something in the brown spectrum, but not too brown. We're talking like Guilliman Flesh, Agaros Dunes, that sort of thing. It just makes it look manky. It just really dirties it up. I'd put it on nice and thick anyway. Once it's got the contrast on, and of course it is dry, I'll give it an overall dry brush with a brown. It's generally quite a chocolatey brown. Mornfang, there's the Citadel one, but there's plenty out there. You just want something like it looks like a dry rust basically. Once I've done that, I'll give it another dry brush, this time with an orange. Not as heavy as with the brown, but just to pick out on those highlights where the rust is a little bit drier, and that'll be more towards the top of the model, keeping it the more chocolatey brown at the bottom. I just figure that rust at the bottom vehicle is going to get wet because it's got the most chance of doing so. Stuff at the very top might actually stay a little bit drier. And once I've done that, just so it doesn't look like a big dirty what's-it, I'll then give it another quick dry brush, again with a gun metal, just on the very edges. It's where the rust has worn off, and it just makes it pop a little bit more, just brings back the metallic sort of components. That's how I do most of my weathered metal, so everything looks like rotten. I don't do it for Space Marines, I don't do it for anything else, I do it for the Orks and Grots. I've done a tutorial video on it. I'll stick the link up here just in case anybody's interested. It goes into a little bit more depth. I find the main benefit of doing them like this is basically that once you've got to this stage, what I would do is I'd start blocking in colours, and then of course I've got cables and different metallics and rockets and lenses and all the rest of the sort of gubbins. But at any point really, I could just say, nope, we're done. I'm not going to be left with blank bits or white bits or grey bits or bits that are just primer. It's all now got a perfectly good covering. I also at this point picked out the roof tiles Just painted them black and then dry brushed them up through a few shades of grey. Yeah, we've got the 3 grots I was painting separately. The one on the left is the one hanging out the back of the turret at the very top. The one in the middle is in the sitting area, holding onto a bit of planking, and the one on the right, standard grot man, is basically just in the back as well, just shooting out over some of the planking sides. I've just dry brushed them up from black through a few greys to a white, just to give them that sort of two-tone look, and then I can just slap on some contrast paint. Yeah, they've got Mantis Warriors green on. I will go on and put the rest of the stuff on, like the pants and the metallics and the belts and the hair and the wristbands and the teeth and the eyes. And you can't see any of it on the model in the end, so it's pointless, but at least it's been done. And if somebody does get there with a light and a magnifying glass and sort of like picks it up and turns it upside down and goes, ah ha ha, oh you did do his teeth, you know, you're not going to catch us out like that. Yeah, I've just started popping on a few more colours. Basically, the red is just corn red. Give it a wash of red tone from Army Painter and pick out some highlights on it with Evil Sun Scarlet. The yellow is Avalon Sunset with Reichland Flesh Tone, and then again highlights in Aerial Yellow. And the blue is Vallejo Blue Green, and then water down a blue contrast like High Lord's Blue from the Army Painter Speed Paint, or as I think it's Talisar Blue from Citadel. Water it down a little bit for a wash, and then a little bit of white in the blue green just to highlight it up. I've also put a few white panels on here, just so I can put some checks and stuff on, which I will shade with New Nuln. New Nuln's quite good for that. Naff all use as a wash to darken something, it's too weak, but just to shade white, I quite like it, to be fair. I also painted all the white plastic card checkers I put on. I mentioned some of them, but I've put quite a few little sort of rows of them up and down, just panels that needed a bit of extra detail basically. Yeah, we'll go a bit more done. The rockets are done at the front. You can see I ended up putting a slightly larger little platform at the back. Because the walkways are quite narrow, I ended up making a slightly larger platform at the back on both sides, just in case I wanted to actually have something stood there doing something. I wanted to be able to, you know, have the room to do that. Painted up the squig in the turret, as well as the grots, and some freehand checkers there on the top turret on the side. The end is now in sight, so I put some transfers on, mostly just glyphs to be fair, scattered about on some of the armour panels which needed a little bit more detail, that were looking a little bit plain. And by my reckoning, there's 2 more steps to do. First one is that grot in the front turret waving a big black flag. Black flag's no good, not the band, the cloth thing. So I'd given it a dry brush with some grey. Next I had to put something on it, and I decided I was going to do a little bit of freehand and just paint up the Grot Commander. I'll start by sketching out a rough drawing of what I want to do with a pencil on top of the actual banner itself. Once you've got the basic shape sketched out, just add your base shade. In this case, for the flesh for example, it was Waaagh flesh. So I filled in the outline and obviously the main body of the face and the hand, and then I went to my next shade up, which was a mixture of Waaagh flesh and Warboss green. Mixed that and then done the same again, but leaving a little bit of the lower parts of where the nose would be, the chin, the cheekbones, etc. Leaving that with the base colour just to show the shade. Then using a lighter shade again, repeat the process, just covering less of the area, and it'll just bring that highlight to the top. So you can see where it starts highlighting across the top of the nose, the top of the ears, the cheekbones, maybe across the tops of the fingers and the thumb. And you do the same sort of thing with your reds on the cloth parts and the peak of the cap and so on and so on. And then give the whole thing a bit of an outline in black. I just think it makes it pop a little bit more against the flag. And of course I drew the teeth in itself, just big cartoon gobbo dagger teeth. And that's a flag done. The Fist of Grot Revolution from the Grot Commander himself. That's something to rally behind. And for the final step, I just had to add more crew. There was currently 5 grots and a squig visible on this Grot Mega tank, or Grot Giga Tank, and I needed a lot more. I couldn't fit normal grots on though, because the walkways were too narrow and there wasn't any spaces to stand them on. So instead I bought a box of Blood Bowl Snotlings and added those. Perfect solution. Amazing little models, so much character in them. Yeah, I've got one sitting on a stick bomb launcher. I whittled the mushroom in his hand down to just a stump, and that's a little stick of chalk is using to record kill tallies. He has another two, one of them on one of the back platforms, chucking a fungus bomb, and another one dressed as a wizard. You know, why not? Directing him. Above them's another little fella with a horn, just trumpeting away. Needs no more explanation than that, I feel. And here I've got a surly little bugger leaning against one of the air shooters, picking his nose. It's always good in a grot tank to have some of the crew going overboard, or just falling off. On my last one there was a little grot trying to get off the tracks, sort of like a little treadmill. On this one he's managed to catch the railing and he's just hanging there waiting for someone to help him back aboard. Little fella on the walkway here, and up above we've got someone pondering over the controls on that panel. And this is one of the lads off the pump wagon. He had a lever because he was pumping the wagon, I suppose, and I just stuck him on right next to one of those wheels, and it looks like he's actually turning it. Another snot from the pump wagon. This one's up on top of a rocket launcher and he's chipping in with the firepower with his slingshot. And the last one, again from the pump wagon. He's normally hanging onto the side strut, so I put him right up at the top, hanging onto the periscope, giving it the old classic, "Draw me closer so I can hit him with me pen." There we go. Grot Giga Tank. Or Mega Tank, Mark II. Done. Finished. Love it. It's seen tournament play. Despite it being a hefty old beast, it's definitely not modelling for advantage, I'll tell you that much. To give you an idea of scale, there he is compared, or there it is, compared to Mozrog. And in a game, it did take him 3 turns to chew through it. But that was, you know, dodgy dice rolls allowing, to be fair. But yeah, all done and dusted. I'd like to thank you for sitting through the video to this point, if you've managed it. And if you have, well done. Well done. This is hopefully the last video in my series of crippling hay fever videos. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little stuffy at the moment. I think that's probably quite fucking obvious. It is to me. The amount of sniffs I had to edit out of that video. Fuck. It's a little bit longer than I originally intended as well, but you know, it's a big build, it's a big video. What do you want? Get your money's worth. Go on. Anyway, not much more I can say really, is it? I haven't already said over the last 3/4 of an hour. So thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, and leave us a comment. I do like reading your comments, and I always try to reply back to them all as well. If I ever don't reply to your comment, sorry, I don't know, I've missed it. Blame the systems. Blame the system. Let's smash the system together, but not too much because we still need to use the system. Middle-aged anarchist here. Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time, ta-da.